Today I'm going to be looking at F-15 Strike Eagle 3, a real gem of a flight simulator from legendary 90s publisher and developer Microprose. Microprose was one of the bigger, more prominent publishers and developers back in the 90s. I remember when I was at, CompUSA or Price Club looking at software and the different computer games that were available. Many of the titles would have Microprose on there, and when I saw that logo, I knew I would be in for something good. They just developed that reputation because they released so many high-quality titles. So they're known for simulation games and strategy games, and my first experience with them was actually the helicopter simulator Gunship 2000, which actually wasn't for 2000, it was, I think, released in 1991. I also had Civilization 2, which I received as a Christmas present one year. That Christmas had many wonderful Civ 2 memories, but I'll leave that story for another time. As for the story at hand, sadly Microprose would sort of peter off in the late 90s and later go out of business in the early 2000s. But for me, since they did have that prime, and such a strong prime there in the 90s, it almost gives them a more legendary status. Enough about that though, on to the game itself. So this right here is my very own original copy of the game that I got so many years ago. Unfortunately, it's one of the few games from my childhood that I have actually been able to keep the box and everything for, which is a real shame. But at least I was able to hold on to this one, and this is one of my favorites. It's just such a work of art. Like when you look at the front, just the logo up there, front and center, blended so well with the just beautiful shape of the F-15. You got the skies going on in the background, the wonderful Microprose logo there in the corner. Brings back the warm memories, and just honestly, it just feels fun. And when we look at the back, it's just so beautiful. I love a really nicely composed desk, in like a picture or a movie or TV show or something, when they got somebody's desk, especially someone like a pilot, and so you got all this cool stuff back there with the medals and patches and ranks and little notebooks and equipment and stuff like that, and just the wonderful blend of the game description there in the back, a few game screenshots, and then that F-15 just screaming across the back there, and then that lovely red Microprose logo there in the corner. Inside we find the original 3.5-inch floppy disk, a wonderful 208-page manual, key reference card, an interesting Microprose and Medalist backup order form. It also includes a software license and limited warranty and customer service registration card, a technical supplement, a game order form, which directly ordering from Microprose, a number of their different titles here. It's really interesting to look at some of the prices, especially realizing inflation in the early 90s. Like a lot of these titles are $79.95, $69.95. So now on to the gameplay itself. I ran this on my modern PC using DOSBox, and it worked just fine. I just love the opening Microprose animation here, the great little ditty. Just give it a listen. While this intro video isn't much to look at now, especially the first time I booted it up as a kid back in the days, it was really cool. It was definitely a wow experience, and I was really excited to get to play the game.
Roger. Eagle 01, clear for takeoff.
So after getting hyped up by that intro, you're taken to the main menu area, which is laid out in this very interesting hangar. Now the hangar has different context-sensitive points around it where you can navigate to your different options. I just find it fascinating how a fully fleshed out simulator like this only took a team this size to actually complete. Can you imagine? It's really something. Some of the options you have are a quick start mode where you can just hop in the pilot seat and get to blasting stuff. Reality, which lets you adjust the realism settings in the game. The roster section. Modems, where you can adjust modem settings. And then theaters, where you can choose between 3 different campaigns to play in. And then there's an Easter egg. If you click on the little rolling television off to the left, you get one of 3 different trailers for other Microprose games. Diving into the rosters section real quick, I love how with everything with this game, you have this sense of being there. You know, like they build little areas so that you feel like you're, you know, part of this Air Force squadron. You've got your own locker. You know, other players have their own lockers. And when I was playing with my brothers, you know, we each had our own, you know, characters that we were playing in here. So it was fun to see that. And you get to see the progress there, like your total score is displayed. And you can check out your cool little medals box and see all the different medals that you've earned. Now with a new player created, it's time to pick a campaign. So you have 3 choices here. The fictional campaigns of Panama and Korea, and then the very real and very 90s Desert Storm there in Iraq. Now when you pick a campaign, you have 2 different options. One where every mission is just a single one-off mission that doesn't affect anything, or a campaign which actually every mission that you run, the game is keeping track of it and applying that across the campaign that you're taking part in. So, you know, if you're blowing things up, those are going to stay blown up, you know, in your next mission. And, you know, the impact that you're having in the war effort is, you know, being calculated there behind the scenes. Definitely really cool. I'm not sure, you know, what magic they worked in the 90s to keep track of that, but it was a very cool feature. Alright, so I think it's about time we kick the tires and light the fires. So let's head into the briefing, get the airplane loaded up with some armaments, and then take off. The briefing gives you some details on your primary and secondary objectives. And the arming screen allows you to choose from a wide assortment of different bombs and missiles to load onto your jet. With your loadout selected, you then choose to take off and you find yourself in the air. So now that you're in control of your jet, how does the game actually play? Well, essentially, what each mission is going to be is you take off, you're heading towards your primary objective, secondary objective, and then you go home. Where the fun comes in is that you're in control of a modern jet fighter. You know, and this was especially something that I appreciated as a kid playing this game. You know, no longer was I playing with some toy jets or something. I was actually controlling, you know, this big powerful jet with these 2 huge engines, you know, and you can just like boom, fire up the afterburners and just start taking off vertically, flying up to 60,000 feet, you know, turn back around, dive down to the ground. So there's definitely a lot of fun to be had just playing with the flight model, you know, since this is a well-realized simulation with a detailed flight model. Another feature of it being a simulation is that there are a lot of systems and computers in the jet that you get to play around with. You know, you actually get to look at the map and pick out different parts. You get to play around with the ground radar computer, with the air radar, with the weapon systems. You're the one actually controlling that. And speaking of weapon systems, as the F-15 is a 2-seater fighter with a backseat weapon systems officer, that's actually in the game as well. So as much as you want to, you know, geek out and pour through that manual to find out how to operate those different systems that are available there from the back seat, you know, you can play around with those to your heart's content. But it should be noted that the game doesn't do a lot of hand holding. Although there is an autopilot That's essentially about the extent of the help that you get in the game. So there are some systems that you're going to need to activate from the back seat that occasionally you got to hop back there to set those. And likewise, while you're in the back seat, there's not an AI pilot out in the front that's going to take care of business while you're back there. Pretty much unless you have the autopilot on, plane's just out there and you're going to have to keep controlling it. Now you might be wondering, say I'm not into the minutia of a modern jet. What if I don't care about all these special systems and everything? Is the game still going to be fun? And I think, child me could have answered that question pretty well. Because although I like jets, it didn't mean that I wanted to actually learn how to fly one in real life. And thankfully you don't have to. The game doesn't ask a lot of you, to be honest. Like, you really could just take off and immediately go land, and you're not going to get penalized. You're not going to get any extra points, and the points that you earn in missions contribute to you getting promotions and medals and how the campaign progresses. But the game isn't really asking too much of you. In fact, it's almost open world in that once you take off, how you go about completing your primary or secondary objective is completely up to you. Outside that, you honestly could ignore your primary and secondary objective and just go after anything that you want to. Even though this game is about attacking ground targets, say you just want to go out there and do some dogfighting, you're welcome to go do that. And that's what really captured my imagination as a kid. Being given this big, powerful toy and being given, the world to go out and do what you want. Then when you add the campaign dynamics on top of that, you have a recipe for a game that you want to keep coming back to that has some long-lasting appeal, because what you're doing in the game, you're getting feedback on and being able to see how that's progressing and affecting your campaign. Where could you pick it up if you're interested? Well, there's always the box copies or possibly some loose floppies around. Those are harder to come by, via eBay or something like that. Aside from that, there are places online that you can find it and run it through DOSBox. If you're at all interested in 90s Sims, F-15 Strike Eagle 3 is at the pinnacle of the era from an all-time great developer. So there you have it, F-15 Strike Eagle 3. It'll always hold a special place in my heart for allowing me to fulfill my dream of being a fighter pilot and conquering the skies.